Fuming again, noxious emissions re-emerge at Cornwall Regional Hospital. Health Ministry dispatches team to investigate. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on air and online at onespotmedia.com. I'm Archibald Gordon.
And I'm Doreen Samuels. Also this evening, wake-up call, voice note threat prompts schools to take action on safety and security.
My word, my bond. Prime Minister Holness says bridge promise for St. Mary community will be installed before June.
No longer united, deeper cracks appearing in Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions over wage agreement with the government.
Watch the cost. Jamaica Bankers Association says new data protection bill could hurt consumers in the pocket.
And in business news, trending down, Bank of Jamaica cuts policy rates to historic lows.
There's also sports, commentary and weather in the primetime package. But before the break, the feedback question.
What, in your opinion, should the government do to encourage fast food outlets to provide more healthy choices for consumers?
Share comments online, facebook.com/Television Jamaica and tweet at Television Jam.
Please stay with us. Primetime News returns after this break.
The Health Ministry says while it is investigating the issue of noxious fumes which are once again affecting the Cornwall Regional Hospital, it is not able to speak on symptoms persons ill. The 6th, 7th and 8th floors of the facility are affected. Acting Chief Medical Officer Jacqueline Besesa Mackenzie says the matter was first brought to her attention on Tuesday.
I am not going to be able to comment on the type of symptoms that persons have been complaining of. After we do our investigations, and our environmental health team is also going to be on location tomorrow to do some preliminary investigation. So we will be able to give more information by Friday.
The Ministry of Health is expected to visit the hospital on Friday.
We are trying to coordinate with the NEG because we would like to meet with the staff, as well as we will be meeting with the management of the hospital. So in terms of symptoms and exaggeration and things like that, I would rather leave that until we get more detailed information so that we can give a more accurate report.
The Nurses Association of Jamaica is calling for a risk assessment to be conducted at the hospital to ascertain the effects of the noxious fumes on patients and staff.
It's not only our nurses who are affected, but the entire Cornwall Regional Hospital staff and the patients too are at risk. But the challenge arises for the patients because they're coming in sick. We are not taking the due diligence to recognize that what is happening is affecting them or potentiating their illness. And so we need to look at what is happening to our patients also. Do we need to keep them in these buildings, or do we need to do our risk assessment to see if what is happening in the building is also affecting their health?
Services at the Cornwall Regional to the adjoining West Jamaica Conference Centre and the Falmouth Hospital. Rehabilitation work is ongoing. Lanigay Franklin, TVJ News.
Education Minister Senator Ruel Reid and his opposition counterpart Ronald Thwaites have condemned the incident in which a teenage student threatened a mass shooting in Kingston. Mr. Reid said this latest incident is a wake-up call for all schools to activate their safety and
from barking guns and criminals on the loose. Some of these criminals are under the age of 18. Police reports have indicated 58 teens were arrested and charged with murder last year. 78 were arrested for shooting, 148 arrested for illegal possession of firearm, and 63 for robbery with aggravation. As for the young students,
the children who live in those areas go to school with high levels of stress. Stress is damaging to the developing brain. Stress is damaging to the developing brain before the child is born. A pregnant woman who sees and is bothered by violence or experiences violence is already passing on hormones into her baby that's already damaging the brain. Babies of mothers who grow up in stress, in areas of high stress, the babies are more irritable at birth, after birth. They're more difficult to calm. and they begin to have problems from that early.
Despite the challenges, Professor Samsvon has stressed the need for parents to not only ensure children are enrolled in early childhood institutions, but that they attend school. She pointed to a preschool study which revealed, among other things, that adults who underwent a quality preschool program rarely got in trouble with the law.
The studies are very clear that children who were in a high-quality early childhood program had fewer arrests, fewer prosecutions, and fewer incarcerations. It's a landmark study, the preschool study, and most people don't realize that that was the greatest impact, was in reduction in crime.
Which is why she's making a case for more investment in early childhood education.
The faster we move early childhood ahead, it's the faster our national development is going to move ahead. So this is why many countries have moved more funding to early childhood than in the later years, because you get much more returns from investment. And the returns from investment are not only in education, you know. The single greatest impact of early childhood investment is reduction in crime, not improvement in education. Clearly both of those are somewhat linked, but when the economic analysis was done, the greatest impact was crime reduction.
The government has allocated $3.3 billion this year for the early childhood education program. Janella Precious, TVJ News.
In a TVJ News follow-up, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is promising residents of Chesterfield in St. Mary that they will be getting the bridge the government committed to building during the by-election campaign last year. Mr. Holness gave the assurance in a tweet from his official page on Tuesday. TVJ's Shamela Mitchell reports.
In the tweet by Prime Minister Andrew Holness, he quoted a release from the National Works Agency, NWA, which stated that the bridge for Chesterfield St. Mary is slated to arrive in the island shortly. It further said the bridge is slated to be in place by the start of the next hurricane. Is also quoted as saying that the bridge is being sourced under the major infrastructure should be completed within a month. The small span compact 200 bridge, which will be 180 feet long, will be built for the purposes of pedestrians, but will also be able to accommodate small cars. On Monday, Chesterfield residents expressed frustration at the snail's pace of the promised structure. They continue to live dangerously, getting to and from the community, using a makeshift structure to cross the river when it is in spate. Shamela Mitchell, TVJ News.
A top story this evening: noxious fumes re-emerge at the Cornwall Regional Hospital. Environmental assessment team to be dispatched to determine the cause after staff and patients complain about feeling ill from its effect. And still ahead, a deepening split. More cracks appearing in Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions over wage agreement with the government. And in business news, trending down. Bank of Jamaica cuts policy rates to historic lows. We'll be right back.
Listen up, Jamaica. Digicel is giving you what you want. Buy a plan to get enough data and more talk time for a lower price. For just $100, you can get 100 megabytes and 100 minutes of Digicel to Digicel talks for 2 days. Or for $250, get 300 megabytes and 250 minutes of Digicel to Digicel talk for
too little physical activity, a lifestyle that is becoming more common among Jamaicans, many who experts believe are unwilling to change. A recent study done by Professor of Public Health and Nutrition at the University of Technology, Fitzroy Henry, forecasts that more than 20,000 more Jamaicans will become chronically sick this year. The reason: obesity.
The productivity of the nation in terms of loss of time away from work, the cost in relation to companies, replacement workers. Think of it, 20,000 persons, new persons will be obese. I mean, it looks like just a number, but it's mind-boggling.
He pointed out that the government has to fork out millions of US dollars each year to treat lifestyle diseases such as diabetes and hypertension. And according to his study, despite the risks, hundreds of Jamaicans are still unwilling to change their bad habits.
Jamaica government spends about $170 million in treating these chronic diseases every year. And what we are suggesting is that, yes, we must look at treatment because people are suffering. But what we have to do is to put some more resources in the preventive aspect.
Which is why he's calling for the government to change its health promotion strategy. For example, it could regulate some places like fast food restaurants which sell unhealthy meals.
We really need to have some standards and guidelines for the fast food companies to adhere to. You're going to hear that people wouldn't want to buy it because it doesn't have enough fat and sugar in it. Other jurisdictions have been able to do it and they have been able to reduce it. We can do the same thing if we are bold enough.
Legislate it.
We can start with the standards, the guidelines, the encouragement, and if needs be, we'll have to look at regulation.
Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
A major row has erupted in the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, JCTU, following its decision to sign a 4-year public sector wage deal with the government. The University and Allied Workers Union, UAW, has confirmed a report carried by our news centre that it has temporarily withdrawn from the Confederation. As we hear in this report from TVJ's Vashon Brown, there are accusations that the Confederation did not act in the best interest of government-paid workers.
The Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions signed a wage agreement with the government last week, Tuesday, but the University and Allied Workers Union, UAW, says it has some concerns about the signing of the agreement. The union feels so strongly about those concerns, it has taken leave from the Confederation. First Vice President of the union, Clifton Grant, says more time should have been spent negotiating a proper contract that give workers more.
Workers more. What in this current contract is a 5% in year 1, 2% in year 2, 4% in year 3, and 5% in year 4. And we are saying that if that is the only adjustment that can be given on a fixed wage, then we should seek to get benefits for the workers that will back up whatever they receive in their fixed income.
Mr. Grant points out that his union was in discussions with the president of the JCTU up to 2 o'clock last Tuesday afternoon. He notes that the UAW was of the impression that there was room for additional dialogue.
Only to learn that the contract was signed on Tuesday, and we learned about that Thursday morning, that the contract was signed from Tuesday. And we feel that if we are in a confederation of trade union, we need to be respectful to each other. We need to treat each other fairly, and we should not leave anybody behind.
The UAW continues to insist that the salary increase workers will get under the current agreement is not adequate.
Last time we agreed on a minimum adjustment of $1,000 per week. So if the person at $10,000 not going to get a $1,000 adjustment over 2 years, everybody down the bottom is going to end up with nothing. And when you look on the benefits, they are not going to get any benefit to back up that minimal adjustment to their income.
When we contacted the president of the JCTU, Helene Davis White, she declined to comment on the matter. The Union of Schools, Agricultural and Allied Workers has broken ranks with the JCTU in not signing the 4-year agreement, though it has pointed out that it will not withdraw from the Confederation. Vashon Brown, TVJ News.
In the meantime, the Police Federation is to send its counter-proposal to the Ministry of Finance this week, following the conclusion of its consultation and analysis of the 4-year wage offer from the government. The Federation says the proposal has been rejected. In a message to its members yesterday, the executive of the Federation said the proposal was extremely disappointing. Like other unions, the government has offered a 16% increase over 4 years. As it relates to public sector teachers, they will, early next month, decide whether to accept the government's latest wage offer. The Jamaica Teachers Association yesterday commenced parish consultations about their proposal.
Consider using your profits to update your system. That message to the Jamaica Bankers Association by a member of the Joint Select Committee today, as they made submissions to have the sections of the Data Protection Bill amended. TVJ's Anthony Lugg reports.
The Data Protection Bill, which was tabled in Parliament on October 3 last year by Minister of Science, Energy and Technology Dr. Andrew Wheatley, requires private and public sector entities to make adjustments to how they provide and protect personal data in their custody. But the Jamaica Bankers Association has taken issue with sections of the bill, pointing to the negative impact it may have on financial institutions. In its submission to the Joint Select Committee of Parliament on Tuesday, the Jamaica Bankers Association spent most of its time addressing feasibility and cost.
The bill in its current form would require that we have a fairly extensive statement before someone begins to give data of what data we're collecting and for what purposes we're going to use it. That is going to in turn have implications for the length and complexity of banking documentation, which everybody already thinks is too long and too complex.
They argue that providing such information to customers poses a challenge, as the current Banking Act requires application forms for the opening of new accounts to be short.
What we do not currently have is, for the most part, is a single document that sets out to a customer, these are the purposes for which the information is being collected. And so that is really left to the interaction that takes place between the customer service representative and the individual.
But by all indications, the submission to have that section of the bill amended did not impress the Joint Select Committee, which triggered this response.
With the profits that the bank make at the end of their financial year, it's an excellent opportunity as good corporate citizens to employ a lot of our graduates who are qualified, who will come in and you pay them something and they update your system.
I really can't see why that is so problematic to the banks.
And by the time the Jamaica Bankers Association completed its submission, Julian Robinson requested to know the cost they will bear to comply with the regulations. But for Marissa Dalrymple-Filbert,
I'm not particularly interested, Member Robinson, as to the cost, because if it is something that is required for transparency is good, then you must absorb it. I cannot understand why it is the banks feel that they must come up with a particular profit and not absorb some of the costs.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
In the meantime, the Press Association of Jamaica, PAJ, also made submissions to the Joint Select Committee on Tuesday. PAJ President Dion Jackson Miller requested that the practice of journalism be fully exempted from the provisions of the Data Protection Act.
We already have an extremely stringent regime governing journalism through the Defamation Law. I would venture to remind the members of the committee that when the Defamation Act was reformed in 2013, parliamentarians strongly resisted the attempts of the media community to have that regime relaxed even further. And as such, we do not believe that any additional legislative measures are necessary. We believe that the defamation regime already acts very strongly as a check on irresponsible journalism.
The PAJ president added that the bill in its current form is likely to generate challenges to the publication of important stories, which will and could result in expensive and time-consuming court proceedings.
Large significant sections of the bill are already exempt when it comes to the practice of journalism, and we do not therefore believe that it would be any huge leap to exempt the remaining sections.
More concerns this evening about the growing impact of pollution on the country's coastline. At least one entity has begun a cleanup project on an area just outside the Kingston Harbour. But as TVJ's Anthony Lugg reports, more needs to be done.
Refrigerator.
Cobra and Duhaney River, and we know that they serve a wide area of the St. Catherine area. So those would be the main sources of pollution to the area.
When our news team visited Refuge Key on Monday, a projects team which consists of residents from the Port Royal community were on the quay removing debris. 423 bags of debris were collected and taken to an area where the National Solid Waste Management Agency, NSWMA, will collect them. The mangrove cleanup is funded by the Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited, KFPTL, and controlled by the University of the West Indies Center for Marine Sciences. Now, with the mangroves suffering a major blow as a result of pollution in the Kingston Harbour and its environs, Outreach Officer at the Port Royal Marine Lab, Chantal Green, says if the matter is not addressed urgently, the impact could be massive in years to come.
By losing the mangroves, you lose your nursery grounds, and that would stand to reason that your fish population can decline over time. So by losing those nursery grounds, for us, less access to fish. Fishermen, their livelihoods would be impacted because they're now catching less fish, and that is happening already, not just in the mangroves but in surrounding ecosystems as well. So you lose those benefits, you lose your recreational benefits. We look at coastline erosion, nothing to buffer wind and wave energy, you're going to lose your coastline.
So with the cleanup project underway, some may say the parties involved may just be wasting time and resources, as several days of heavy rainfall may multiply the pileup now at the quay. Ms. Green says the team will not be letting up.
We want to change our values and attitudes of how we see the environment. And what we always tell visitors to the lab is that each visitor represents a household. So you now have the chance to have that multiplier effect. You can go back to your family members and tell them what is not supposed to happen to the environment.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
Time now for the responses from our friends on Facebook and Twitter, and Archie is at the smartboard.
Thanks, Doreen. Here's our question this evening. We're asking, what, in your opinion, should the government do to encourage fast food outlets to provide more healthy choices for consumers? First comment is that stop the hike in food prices so more people can have home-cooked meals. Right now, it's cheaper to buy food than to cook at home. Next comment, government can't tell people what type of business to run or how to run it. It's up to us as citizens to have healthy meals and choose wisely where they eat. There are options out there. Next comment, they're only concerned in making money, not the consumer's health. Imagine you buy a lunch with your last dollar only to find a roach in there. So my opinion, nothing gonna change unless it's mandatory. And our final comment is that government can't make healthy food choices for people. Consumers need to wise up and take responsibility for the food they choose to put in their bodies. Keep your comments coming on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/TelevisionJamaica and your tweets to @TelevisionJam. Business news.